Hello everyone and welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today I have a birthday card to share with you where I am using the A Little Somethin Somethin stamp set from My Favorite Things. I'm also using the Sweet Surprise stamp set for the sentiment, and then I'm using one of the stars from Favorite Somebunny from the die set. But first let's color in this girl. Now I wanted to have this card having some detail, so I'm going to leave the card that the girl is holding as is, just until I figured out my own card design, and then I wanted to sort of recreate that on that little small card. Of course, I'm not an expert in drawing, that's why I use stamps, so I couldn't draw in the girl at a certain area, so that's why I'm using a star, but you'll see that later on. First, coloring this image. The paper that I'm using is Transotype Perfect Coloring Paper. That's a really forgiving paper and it can handle quite a lot of layers of Copic markers, so that's why I like using it. And then for my Copics, if you want to revisit the combinations that I'm using here, definitely check out the blog post where I have everything listed for each part of this image. I'm also coloring from darkest to lightest because that's the way I prefer coloring with alcohol markers, but there are many ways of coloring. Just be aware that depending on how you start maybe, or how many layers you add, that your result can be different, even if you're using the same markers. So here for the hair, I'm using some flicking methods, and I'm trying to follow those lines that are already there, made by the illustrator of this stamp set. And that's why I really love coloring these images, also Girls or Boys by Rochelle Miller. I think these are great to exercise these flicking methods, as well as they have often a quite big size of stamp, so it's easier than having a really tiny stamp with hair to do the flicking on. So I'm going over here again just to get some darker colors on there. But still, if you have some areas where you just have white, just see it as a highlight. I'm not trying to color every area of this hair. I prefer having some white highlights than to not have anything at all. So that's what I'm doing here. Just this tail, I just wanted to have a bit more of those streaks, but it was hard. So as I often say, I try to start whenever I'm coloring a girl or a boy with the skin tone and the hair, because I found those things the hardest parts of the image. And then for the dress, for example, once I did the hair, I'm sure that the rest will work out, because the other parts of the image are easier to color in, if you ask me. So that's why I start first with the hardest part, and then I just do something where I'm comfortable with. So I wanted some really dark blues in this coloring, but also enough contrast, so that's why I'm going from really dark, the B39, to actually pretty light, using the B41 as my lightest color. And then I will also use some blues on the stripes that we have, as well as these little elastic thingies for the ponytails. And then for the shoes, I will use browns. I don't know why, but I tend to use browns whenever I'm coloring one of the Tiddly Inks stamps. So as you can see, I'm quite often repeating my marker combinations. Here for the shoes, I ended up adding the E59, but then I'm going back to the colors that I used on the hair. So actually, I barely used any markers. I still used a few, of course, to get my combinations right. But as you can see here, E37, E33 I already used on the hair, and since I just added a darker marker on top, it's a completely different brown to the hair. So that's something that I really think is one of the strengths of alcohol markers. Just buying one more can give you a completely different result just by using already what you have and then the new one on top. So that's for now the coloring. I'm not going to die cut it, because I think if I need to do masking, which I will do, it's easier when I have a complete panel to just add the mask on top instead of just having the die cut image. And then it was time to figure out what I was going to do on my background. I took an A2 size panel, I cut it out using the basic rectangles from my elephant, and then I had to position everything that I wanted to use. So the sentiment from Sweet Surprise and then this adorable girl. I decided to take out the stem set because, well, since I didn't die cut the image yet, I couldn't play with placement. And then I thought, well, maybe I can just do a bit of some sort of ink blending, a bit edgy, using a sort of triangle sort of shape on the top of my card. So I did that, covering with some pieces of paper those corners that I haven't masked off. And then I decided to use yellows because yellow and blue is just a gorgeous combination. They pop next to each other, and so that was what I wanted to do. This will be a clean and simple card, but having those colors sort of contrasting one against another, it really helps with clean and simple cards. So I took some yellow distress inks and I made sure to have a gradient on top of my background here. And then I also decided to take on a stencil that I used only recently, but well, it was a lot of fun to add to one of my previous cards. So I decided to take it again, the Starry Sky stencil from Fawn. And I'm going to do the, well, tone on tone. I'm just going to add the same colors through this stencil, but just a bit heavier handed, so that you will really see it pop in. And that's how I figured out what I was going to add to the card that this girl is holding. Now I had to figure out how to add it without ruining my coloring that I already had. So there was only one thing to do after removing my purple tape here, and it was to create also a mask for the little girl. So I'm really slowly peeling off my purple tape here. I don't want to rip my paper, really slowly. I just love this. I love the white border that I have on the edge. I love how crisp it turned out. And then I took my Inky Dinky Doo stamping mask paper to add this girl on top. I'm not going to use a Misty. It doesn't have to be stamped out perfectly. It's just to create a mask. And then I'm just going to cut out the front panel of the card that she's holding, because there I want to recreate my card in some way. So I'm quickly cutting that out, trying to not snip anything off because I need this mask completely to be there. And then once I have that, I'm going to add it on top. And as you can see, just the front panel of the card will be visible. So this way I will protect the coloring that I did. And I can do some ink blending on this small card. So I took my background again to see how I masked off that, well, that corner. And then I took my distress inks again. Really tiny area. I think if I would redo this, maybe just skip the darkest color of yellow and just have fun with those two lighter ones. But it worked out. I also took the stencil, and that's really hard to see in the pictures in the end, but there are some stars. There truly are some stars. So you will see it here. I tried to sort of find an angle so that I could have some stars and some dots on this panel. And then I just ink blended this yellow on top, but it sort of faded more than I would have wanted it to be. But as you can see here, it was, well, it was there. So I'm removing the purple tape, and then I slowly removed the mask. It went really slowly because the mask was a bit stuck on it. I got a tip, well, it didn't tear anything, so I just continued really slowly. Not that I had a choice. From time to time, whenever you use a mask, it can be really sticky. You can add it first on top of your hand or anything to get a bit of the sticky off before using it. Or another tip that I got from you but haven't used it so far, but I got it from you and I got some very useful tips in the past. But if you're struggling with removing the mask, then there is also the option to use your heat gun, and that way the mask will also peel off more easily. So that's a tip that I can also give thanks to you guys. And then here I tried out which star would work. So as I said, if I could draw, then maybe I would have attempted to draw her like really tiny, but I could never do that as detailed, as gorgeous as she is. So I took this star just using the die from this favorite Somebunny, and I used the same blue markers to color it in. Well, I just didn't use the lightest blue from the dress because it is way smaller, so you don't need 4 markers to color this in. And I did 2 layers, and then I added it on top of the card. Now, later on, I will add stickles, but that didn't work, and that I will also show you. But normally I add the details like glossy accents and stuff, and you can just see the end result in the picture. Now, I didn't like it when it dried, so I decided to continue filming and just fix that really quickly and show that to you as well. But first, let's stamp out the sentiment. I love this sentiment. I really think it's gorgeous, and I love the script. It's really fine and just really elegant. So I added tons of thin foam squares on the back of my image, and then I'm going to add it like that. I also wanted a bit of shadowing underneath her feet, so I just took some warm gray markers, really simple, just adding a bit of scribbling things to sort of represent some shadowing. And then I could add this panel on top of a card base. So therefore I'm using some adhesive roller. Anything will do. I'm adding it as straight as possible, and then we will start embellishing and just finishing this card. So first off, I am going to add some stars. I used these as well on my other card. I just really like it. Iridescent stars, iridescent everything would work. But since I had those stars on the background already due to the stencil that I used, I just thought adding this was just a nice detail. And after fiddling a bit, I used some liquid glue to add these stars on top of my panel. And then, as I said, I'm going to use stickles on top of the blue star. Now, I love the stickles that I used. They are the Stardust stickles, and they are truly my favorite. And it dries clear, and then you have gorgeous glitter on top of your projects. Now, it dried, and it was really ugly in my opinion. Like, all the glitter dried at the same area, and I don't get why, because like this, I just loved it. I will show it a bit closer up. It's just perfect, the glitter, how it is right now. But then it dried, and I got this. You cannot see anything of the blue anymore, and I was really annoyed by it. So I decided to film again, so this is the next day, and just create that star again. I couldn't remove it anymore, it was really stuck. So good adhesive. So I colored it again, and then I thought, well, I will just add it, and then just to be sure, I use glossy accents. But I thought, no, no. Let's try the glitter one more time, but use something else for the glitter. So what I used was the NUVO Glitter Drops White Blizzard. And believe it or not, but this worked out fine. I really like it. It's also a really subtle glitter, so if you compare NUVO to Stickles, then I personally find that Stickles have way thicker glitter in it, and NUVO is a bit more subtle. So it dried beautifully, and I'm really glad that I just redid the star, because I didn't like it at all once it dried with Stickles. And normally I don't complain about Stickles. Definitely not a Stardust, but in this case it really wasn't beautiful. So this is the up close, and then of course this is how it looks. It's just perfect, the glitter now. Okay, so that's my card for today, my video and my tiny struggle over there. I hope that you enjoyed this video, and of course that you like the end result and how the card of the girl is matching the card that I made in its entirety. Let me know in the comments what you think about this card. I want to thank you all for stopping by, and I wish you an incredible day. Bye!